one life you've got. So make it your best shot. Live it with so much of vigor, so much of enthusiasm, and so much of love, that if at the end of your life you are being shown the replay of the whole life, you look at it and you say that yes, that was my best, I couldn't have done any better. So now we start with the facial fractures. So you are sitting at home and your neighboring aunt comes to you with her son, that see, he was playing, he had a fight with his friend, and look at his face, all his face swollen up. So now why has she come to you? She's asking you, please see if there is some fracture or not, so face is swollen up so much. So then you have a look at the child, and yes, you must have experienced all this keeps happening from neighbors, friends, relatives, everybody, they know you are a doctor, so one free advice, yes. So now she has come to you for the free advice, and what you think, my God, the whole face is swollen, where should I look for the fracture? So immediately you remember, yes, what is the most common fracture of face? What is the most prominent part of a face? Yes, that is the nose. So most common fracture of the face is the nasal bone fracture. So immediately you remember that, you put your finger on the nose of the child and you look for crepitus, you move it and you feel that tuck tuck, the crepitus you feel, and you know that yes, fracture is there. You tell her yes, fracture is there. So now you know what next she is going to ask is what should we do. So before that you think that let me examine properly what type of fracture it is. So and suddenly then you also remember that fractures of the nose are of 3 types. Whenever it is the issue of prestige, everything starts coming to the mind immediately, yes. So you remember that there are 3 types of fractures of the nasal bone. So nasal bone fractures are of 3, they are divided into 3 types: class 1, class 1, class 2 and class 3, according to the severity. The severity goes on increasing. Now the class 3 is the very severest form, that is known as naso-orbito-ethmoid fracture. Naso-orbito, this complete ethmoid fracture, that is a very severe high velocity injury. So that person will not come to you at home. If the child has come to you at home, it will be either class 1 or class 2. Now how do we know it is class 1 or class 2, and how does it make a difference? In class 1 as well as in class 2, both the nasal bone as well as the septum is fractured. The difference is that class 1 is less severe. So in class 1 the septum is fractured but it is not deviated. In class 2 the septum is fractured as well as it is deviated. So both of them, there is fracture of nasal bone plus septum. Both are fractured here. So here also same, yes, but here septum is not deviated. Septum is not deviated. Not deviated, and in this one the septum is deviated. Septum is deviated. Now another thing that you need to know here is that what is the type of fracture of the septum in class 1 and in class 2. And what is the type of blow that occurs in class 1 and class 2? Okay, I am giving you 2 options of blows. One is a lateral blow, one is a frontal blow. What do you think will be more severe? What blow will lead to a more severe injury, a lateral or a frontal blow? Yes, a frontal. Just imagine a frontal blow, all the pressure comes here, yes. A lateral will go little here also, little here also. Yes, so frontal is more severe. So which one will be bilateral? Bilateral means not the bilateral, bilateral blow. Yes, so this is caused by lateral blow, and the lateral blow can lead to any fracture of the nose. So this can be caused by lateral blow also, and here there can be frontal blow also. So frontal blow, if it occurs, so be careful, okay, while fighting. Let it be a lateral, not a frontal blow. So if it is a frontal blow, that will lead to a more severe fracture of the face, that is the class 2. Now here also we need to see what the type of the fracture of the septum is. In class 1 it is a vertical fracture. It is a vertical fracture of the septum, fracture of septum, whereas in class 2 it is a horizontal or C-shaped fracture. Horizontal or C-shaped fracture. C-shaped fracture. So let us see that. So here we are seeing what is this appearing to like this fracture of the septum. Is it vertical or horizontal? Okay, see this and tell this is vertical or horizontal? Yes, so this is vertical, this is class 1 and class 1 is known as shibboleth fracture. It is known as shibboleth fracture. How do we remember? Class 1 looks like this. Yes, so 1 is vertical. So vertical fracture is class 1. 2 is horizontal and horizontal is known as Jarjaway fracture. This is known as Jarjaway. So C comes earlier, shibboleth is 1 is vertical. J comes later. Jarjaway is 2, Jarjaway is horizontal or it is C-shaped like this. It is horizontal or it is C-shaped. So now you examined the nose of the child also and you saw that the septum is, maybe it is deviated, maybe it is not deviated. So if it is not deviated, which fracture is that? Class 1. What is that known as? Yes, shibboleth. And if it is deviated, then what is that known as? Jarjaway, that is class 2. So whatever you saw, you told your aunt that auntie fracture is there and it is a shibboleth fracture or it is a Jarjaway fracture, and she is really very impressed and she is asking you now what should we do. So what will you ask her? Yes, you will ask her, you will ask the child to come after 1 week so that you get some time to study. Why? Yes, because you want the edema to go down. Now had this child come with a fracture of the feet, of the leg, of the hands, would you tell him that go and come after 1 week, let the edema go down, let the swelling go down and then I will think what to do? No, never. Then why in the nose do you want all the swelling and all the edema to go down and only then you want to decide what you have to do? Yes, because in the nose we do not correct the fracture, we correct deformity. This external part of the nose has no significance other than the cosmetic part. So this part of the nose, whether you are going to correct or not, whether it needs correction or not, that you need to see. If there is a fracture and if there is no deformity, then that fracture will heal in that particular shape. But if there is deformity, only then you will do something. So you will ask the child to come after 1 week. And after 1 week, when the child has come to you, then you will look for whether there is deformity or not. If there is no deformity, just let it be. It will heal by itself in that particular shape. If there is deformity, then you need to correct it. So if you need to correct it, what is the type of correction that you will do? Will you open, give an incision everywhere and open, expose all the bones and then correct it? Or will you go for a close reduction? Close reduction means you are not giving an incision somewhere. Yes, so if the patient has come after 1 week, then what we are going to do is close reduction. What is close reduction? In close reduction, we use 2 types of forceps. One is for reducing the bone and the other is for septum. The one that we use to reduce the bone, it looks like this. This is known as Walsham, and this one is, the other one is for Ashes. This is for septum. Ashes is for septum. Ashes is for septum. So this instrument is again one that is asked in your, both in your entrance as well as in your viva. This is for bone. How do we remember? For bony wall is known as Walsham. Okay, wall is Walsham. Whereas for septum is Ashes. How do we remember when we see which one is Ashes and which one is for the bone? Now for bone, we wanted to hold only the bone. Where is the bone in the nose? Bone in the nose is only in the upper 1/3. So we do not want that when we grasp the bone, the whole of the lateral wall gets grasped and then the whole of the lateral wall will move or can get injured. So we want the pressure only at that upper end. So that is why here only the upper end is the part that grasps. Whereas in the septum, we know that the septum is the whole, from here to down, everything is the septum. So when we hold the septum, we want a better grip. For that, we want the whole of the edges of this forceps to be gripping. So that is why the longer blades are the ones which are for septum, and the blades which are short and only towards the end, they are the one for the bone. So this one is the Walsham and this one is the Ashes. Now also many a times when you get in the picture, you get a picture like this. Just note here, are you able to see that one end there is some rubber tube or some rubber thing put to cover that blade. Now why is that? So which one is that? They ask you that which one is the outer part, which one is the inner part. So the part which has the rubber tube is the one that is outer, and the rubber tube is placed there so that you do not, while grasping, injure the external part of the skin here, so that it will not give a cosmetic deformity later on. So now what do we do by these forceps in closed reduction? We pass the forceps, we hold the nasal bone tightly, and we do tuck, 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 tuck. So what is that? We refracture. That is exactly what we do. We just move like this, like this, like this, so that it refractures. So why do we want to refracture? Yes, we want to refracture so that there is the segments become easily mobile, and then we realign it, whatever shape we give them, and then we put a splint over it, so that will take that particular shape. So in surgery, when we are writing the notes, what do we write? We have disimpacted and realigned. But actually this is closed reduction, so we actually cannot see which part is disimpacted. So what we do actually is refracturing and realigning. This is what is known as closed reduction of the nasal bone. So what is the management of class 1 or class 2 nasal bone fracture? Yes, so the management of class 1 or class 2 nasal bone fracture is, the management is closed reduction. It is closed reduction. Closed reduction, and that is after what time? Immediately do you don't know. We do it after 5 to 7 days, that is after the edema subsides, after the edema subsides. So you ask the child, you told the child that, see, we want to see whether there is any deformity or not, so why don't you come after 1 week? Till that time the swelling will also go off and we will be having a better idea. So now after 1 week, what happened? The mother felt that if there is some deformity, then he will have to undergo surgery. So she thought that let me wait for some more time, maybe after some more time deformity will, the swelling will reduce. What I am seeing is actually not the deformity, it's the swelling only. So she waited for 1 more week, and then she thought that maybe it has gone down a little, let me wait for 1 more week. So now she has come to you after 3 weeks. After 3 weeks, when the child comes, and what you are seeing is, yes, there is a deformity. It is, the edema would have subsided long back. So, but what you are seeing is, yes, there is deformity. Yes, so now will it make a difference in your management, or will it be same? Did you specifically tell the child that come after 1 week only? Don't wait, and you don't decide whether it is edema or deformity, let me decide, you come after 1 week. You have to tell it like that. Why? Because if the child comes after 3 weeks, what will happen? Anytime after 3 weeks, what happens in bones at 3 weeks? Yes, the fibrous and bony reunion occurs, callus formation occurs. So callus formation occurs, fibrous and bony reunion will occur, and now you will not be able to do closed reduction, which means now you will have to do open reduction. What is open reduction? You will have to give proper incision on the septum, expose the nasal bones, and then you will have to fracture it, remove whatever is deformed, and then correct it. What is that surgery known as to correct any external deformity of the nose? That is what is known as rhinoplasty. Rhinoplasty. So if the child has come anytime after 3 weeks, then we will have to go for rhinoplasty. Now for rhinoplasty, will if this is a 6 years, 7 years, or maybe 8 years old child who has come to you, will you go for a rhinoplasty immediately? No. Did I tell you that all the facial bones, they develop till 17 years of age? The development of the facial bones is completed by 17 years of age. So before that, we do not do any work on the external framework of the nose, because all this area are the secondary centers for ossification. We do not want to damage them. So after 3 weeks, if the child has come, and if the child is more than 17 years, then we go for rhinoplasty. And we immediately do not go for rhinoplasty. Now 3 weeks has already occurred. We wait for 6 months to let it heal properly, and let that whatever deformity has to occur and whatever to settle down, and then we do rhinoplasty, that is after 6 months. We do it after 6 months. So if the child has come, so you have to specifically tell that come after 1 week. If the child has come anytime after 3 weeks, then you will go for rhinoplasty, and that is once the child is 17 years of age. So now you have told the child that, see, come after 1 week. You don't decide, I will decide whether it is deformity or whether it is enema. You just come after 1 week. The child is going back. The mother is also hitting the child is crying also very badly. And what you are seeing is that the child is crying, all the secretions are coming out from the nose, and what strikes you? Yes. Is the secretion that is coming out from the nose, is it CSF? Yes, so immediately call the child back. And now you want to confirm whether it is CSF or not. If later on they come to know it was CSF, think what they are going to think about you. Yes. So now, how sitting at home can you confirm that this thing that is coming out from the nose is CSF and it is not nasal secretions? What other tests that you can do? Yes, you can ask the child to sniff back. If it is nasal secretions, will he be able to sniff it back? Don't tell me you don't know. Nasal secretions, yes, he will be able to sniff it back. If it is CSF, will he be able to sniff it back? No. So that is what is known as sniff test. Also, you can ask the child to, you can take a handkerchief. Yes, handkerchief. What did you do with the handkerchief? We have taken the handkerchief. Okay, now wipe your sweat, keep it back. No, then what are you doing with the handkerchief? Yes, whatever secretions are coming out from the nose, you take it on the handkerchief. And if it is nasal secretions, will it stiffen? Yes. Whereas if it is CSF, will it stiffen? No, it will not stiffen. So that is what is known as handkerchief test. So the clinical tests are, one is the sniff test. Sniff test. The other is the handkerchief test. Handkerchief test. So these are for CSF rhinorrhea, to check whether there is CSF rhinorrhea or not. Okay, now another test we have is whatever is coming out from the nose, take it on a piece of Whatman's filter paper. This is useful when there is a little bleeding also, when there is a trauma and that leads to little bleeding also. So the blood in the secretion, in that drop, will produce a central circle, and that we have seen so many times now. Whenever we put a drop on the paper or whenever on a cloth the drop falls, you can see a clean round of the drop of the blood, red round circle. But if in this drop there is CSF also, then that creates a halo, transparent halo around the clot, around the red clot. And this is how it appears. This is what is known as the halo sign. This is known as the halo sign. This is known as the target sign, or this is known as the double ring sign. What was double density sign? Double density, more dense and less dense. Yes, that was in allergic fungal sinusitis. This is double ring sign. Double ring, two rings we are seeing. Double ring sign. So this is what you test on the Whatman filter paper. You test that, or any filter paper you can test that. That is what is known as double ring. Also, we can do one postural test. What is that test? You make the patient lie down supine for some time, then you make him suddenly sit and flex the neck. So if by doing this there is a sudden gush of fluid from the nose, that is CSF. That indicates that it is CSF. So why this happens is that all the CSF connects in the sinuses, especially in the sphenoid sinus. This is helpful when the injury is at the level of, or when the defect is at the level of the pituitary fossa. So all the CSF collects there, and the moment the patient does like this, all the CSF comes out. That is what is known as reservoir sign. That is reservoir sign. Yes, so I had a patient who came to me with a complaint that she, whenever in the morning she ties the shoelaces of her child before the child is going for school, she has sudden gush of fluid coming out from the nose. And in this patient, she has been showing elsewhere to physicians, and they have been treating her as allergic rhinitis. Why allergic rhinitis? Because they told her that in allergic rhinitis also, in the morning there is nasal discharge, loss of nasal discharge, and after that it becomes okay. And that is the only time maybe when she was bending down like that, so it was coming out. So she did not have any history of allergy. She did not have any such history. Yes, maybe that was around maybe 2 or 3 years back, she had the history of a road traffic accident. So this needs to be investigated, and yes, she was investigated, and there was a CSF leak at one of the area of the base of skull near the cribriform plate, which was found. So yes, it is not necessary that the leak occurs immediately. It can happen later on also. That can be a delayed leak also. Maybe now because of increase of pressure or because of anything, now the leak has occurred. So whenever any patient complains of any complaint like this, then you need to investigate that yes, this is not an allergy, the patient does not have any other history, no sneezing, no other such history. Then you can get the test done also, you can get the blood test done to see the immunoglobulin E levels and everything. Investigate this whether this is CSF or not. So if this is coming out from the nose, how do you know that this is CSF or not? You have collected, this is how you have collected the CSF also. Yes, send it for a biochemical test. So which is the biochemical test which will tell you that this is CSF or not? Which is the biochemical test? Yes, the best biochemical test is beta-2 transferrin. Why beta-2 transferrin? Yes, beta-2 transferrin component protein is present only in the CSF. So that is why if it is present here, you know that it is not present in nasal secretions. So if it is present, then this fluid is CSF. Also what we can do is we can test for beta trace proteins. We can test for beta trace proteins, they are also present in the CSF. And then if the cause is trauma, then you go for to see exactly what is the site of injury. So then the best investigation becomes to see through localize where exactly the injury is, and that is a high resolution CT of the base of skull. I told you that if there is trauma, so what is the most common cause of CSF rhinorrhea? Is it trauma or is it some other cause? What is the most common cause of CSF rhinorrhea? Yes, the most common cause of CSF rhinorrhea is trauma. Trauma, in 95% of the cases the cause is trauma. 5% is spontaneous. 5% is spontaneous, and this spontaneous, how spontaneously CSF will come out? Yes, spontaneously it can come out when there is either a congenital dehiscence or there is any erosion either because of infection or because of any because of any tumor. So if there is a congenital dehiscence, or if there is erosion because of what? Erosion can be there because of either any infection, like there is osteomyelitis, or there is any tumor. Tumor can be intracranial, tumor can be extracranial, which is causing erosion of the base of skull, which is ultimately leading to this CSF leaking. There is also a condition which is known as empty sella syndrome. What is empty sella? Empty sella. What is sella? Sella is the seat for pituitary, the sella turcica. So in that area, if there is ischemic necrosis of the pituitary gets necrosed because of whatever reason. So what happens is that all the area where pituitary was now is filled with CSF. So the pulse pressure of so much of CSF is more than what usually should be in a particular area. So if this increased pulse pressure remains for a very long time, that can lead to thinning and erosion of this area of the base of skull, that is the sella turcica base, that is the roof of the sphenoid, and it can lead to the CSF leaking into the sphenoid and then coming out as CSF rhinorrhea. So if there is empty sella syndrome, that can also lead to spontaneous CSF rhinorrhea. Otherwise, the most common cause is trauma. What is this trauma? Yes, is it iatrogenic or non-iatrogenic? Is it surgical or non-surgical? Obviously, we are not such bad surgeons, yes. So yes, it is a non-iatrogenic trauma. It is fracture of cribriform plate. Fracture of cribriform plate. If I ask you what is the weakest part of the base of skull? Cribriform plate. Yes, it has got so many openings, so it is known as cribriform. Yes, so cribriform plate. So this is the most common site of fracture of the base of skull, most common site of CSF rhinorrhea. Can the trauma also be iatrogenic? Can surgically also you injure? Yes or no? We can injure. And what is that surgery? What is the surgery that can lead to the CSF rhinorrhea very, very commonly? Yes, FES. We have already done that. In FES, there can be injury to all the important structures which are lying all around the nose. There can be injury to lacrimal sac, there can be injury to the orbit, there can be injury to the cribriform plate. And that is why before doing a FES, we always need to get the investigation done. Which is the investigation that we get done before doing FES? Yes, it is a CT. What CT? NCCT? CCT. It is non-contrast CT. Why do we want to get the CT done? Because we want to see the anatomical, yes, not only we want to see the disease till where it is going, whether it is localized to only maxillary or ethmoid also or sphenoid also, so that we know what all we are going to operate, what all we need to operate. Also to see the anatomical abnormalities. Yes, also to see if there is any Haller cell, if there is any Onodi cell, we know all that, yes. And also very important is to see the level of the cribriform plate. So does the level of cribriform plate keeps changing? Now what we usually have an idea is that the cribriform plate is like this, yes. This is the ethmoid bone, this is the lamina peperacea laterally, and this is the cribriform plate straight. It is not like that. What is the shape of cribriform plate? The cribriform plate is not straight. Here we have the crista agila in the center. The cribriform plate has a horizontal part. This is known as the medial part or medial lamella, and then it has got a vertical part like this. It has got a vertical part. This is what is known as lateral lamella. Are you seeing now? So the depth of this cribriform plate can vary. It can be, suppose this here is the rest of the roof of the nose that you are seeing, or the paranasal sinus that you are seeing. So don't think that only if you reach here you can injure the cribriform plate. If you are going at this level or below this level, you can injure the cribriform plate, because the cribriform plate comes lower down. It has two parts. It has a vertical part and a horizontal part, which means you need to see whether this cribriform plate, what is the actual depth of the cribriform plate. Is it shallow or is it very deep? If it will be very deep, which means it is lower down in the nose, so it can be injured very easily. So that is why we get the CT scan done, and this classification to see the depth of the cribriform plate is what is known as the Quiros classification. So the Quiros classification can be of three types. In first, there is a shallow cribriform plate, that is 1 to 3 millimeters only. The next is 4 to 7 millimeters. As you can see here, can you see this is the medial lamella, and here we have the lateral lamella. Here we have the lateral lamella. So and the type 3 is the deepest, that is 8 to 16 millimeters. Now what is important for us to know here is that sometimes it is given in your exam that what is the most common site of CSF rhinorrhea. Is it the lateral lamella of the cribriform plate, or in the choice is given, is it the fovea ethmoidalis? So what is fovea ethmoidalis? Now what is fovea ethmoidalis? Now this part we have seen. Have you seen this part? This thing is the medial lamella, and this thing that you are seeing is the lateral lamella. This all is the cribriform plate. The cribriform plate, yes, the cribriform plate which we usually draw like this. This cribriform plate is forming the roof of the nose. Laterally it is articulating with this, what is this? The frontal bone. This is the frontal bone, yes. So this is the orbital plate of the frontal bone. So laterally where it articulates with this thick bone that you are seeing, thick bone. Are you seeing this thick bone? So this thick bone is what is the frontal bone. Now this junction of the this bone is a very thick bone. So this junction of the lateral lamella with the thick frontal bone, this is a very sensitive area, because this lateral lamella is very thin and this is very thick. So the most common site of fracture when it occurs of the cribriform plate, it is what? It is of the lateral lamella. It is of the lateral lamella, and this thick bone is what is known as fovea ethmoidalis. So we get a CT scan done, and to see how much is the depth of this cribriform plate. Yes, so this thick bone that you are seeing, this is the fovea ethmoidalis. Okay, so I hope you have understood what is fovea ethmoidalis, because this is one question you repeatedly ask me, fovea ethmoidalis, what is that the most common site of leak? Because in some places we are getting that is the answer. So that is not the answer. The most common site of fracture of the base of skull is the cribriform plate, and that is the lateral lamella. Fovea ethmoidalis is not a part of cribriform plate, it is a part of frontal bone. Iatrogenic injury can occur, but iatrogenic injury is not so common, yes, not as common as a normal fracture. So be it whatever fracture, the most common site of injury is, the lateral lamella of the cribriform plate. Lateral lamella of cribriform plate. So when fracture is the most common site, the best investigation becomes what? Yes, best investigation is a high resolution CT. If I ask you, a high resolution CT, is it the best investigation for any other condition you know of? Okay, let me ask you that if I want to get a CT of the temporal bone, what is the CT that I ask for? Yes, a high resolution CT. A fracture of the temporal bone, can it lead to CSF rhinorrhea? Fracture of temporal bone? Yes, so for that, I hope you have remembered the fractures of temporal bone. Yes, if there is a fracture of temporal bone which has injured the roof of the middle ear, so roof of the middle ear separates the middle ear from brain above, so there can be CSF coming into the middle ear, and if the tympanic membrane of this patient is intact, where will that CSF that is collected in the middle ear go? It can come through the eustachian tube, present as CSF coming out through the nose, CSF rhinorrhea. This is actually a CSF otorhinorrhea, but we will not know unless and until we investigate. So we get a HRCT done of the complete base of skull, and we find out the site of leak. Now also what we can do is, if this works only if the leak is active, we can put a dye in the CSF, a contrast in the CSF, and after that we can do the CT. So if the leak is active, we will exactly see from where it is leaking. That will be confirmatory that this is the site, but this is not possible if it is not an active leak. So if it is an active leak, then you can go for what is known as, this is known as CT cisternography. In the cistern you put a dye, so in the CSF you put the dye, CT cisternography. That is CT cisternography. So now if you have confirmed the exact site also, what should you do? Will you immediately go for repair or will you wait for some time? Yes, will you immediately go for repair? The CSF is coming out. Will you repair immediately or will you wait? Yes, we know any breach in the body, anywhere in the body, has the capability of healing by itself. So all we have to do is keep that area free of pressure and free of infection. So what we will do to keep that area, that is the area of the CSF, free of infection, is you can give antibiotics. To keep that area free of pressure, what is the pressure thereof? Of CSF. So how do we decrease the CSF pressure? Yes, so the management will be, first is conservative. So you give conservative management in which we decrease the CSF pressure. Decrease CSF pressure. How do you decrease CSF pressure? That is by, yes, by drugs. You can give which drugs? Yes, you can give mannitol. You can give glycerol. You can give diuretics. You can give diuretics. Yes, okay, all this you know. Tell me, propped up position or head down position? We want to decrease the CSF pressure. What should be the position of the patient? Propped up or head down? Yes, you must be thinking such common things. Is it asked? Yes, this was one of the choices in your exam. Propped up or head down? What will you do? Propped up or head down? If we do head down, what will happen? The pressure will increase. We want to decrease the pressure. So it is propped up position. So we will go for propped up position. Propped up position, and we will do conservative management. We can give antibiotics. Yes, and all this conservative management will be done for how long? How long will you wait? Yes, for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, and if in 2 weeks time this does not subside, it continues, only then you will go for repair. Now for repair, it is always better. Can you approach that CSF, the cribriform plate, through the nose endoscopically? Yes, we already did that. We can endoscope, we can with the help of endoscope approach this area. No benefit, then we go for repair. And this is endoscopic repair. Endoscopic repair preferably. If not possible, then you can also go for external repair. And while doing repair, endoscopic repair, to know exactly what is the site of leak, because most of the time when we are doing the repair, the site of leak would have already not active, it is not active. So how do we see that? What we can do is that we can put the fluorescent dye. We can push the fluorescent dye into the CSF and we can put pledgets all over the nose inside. So we can see which area, which pledget gets stained. So that can tell us the site. While endoscopic repair, to localize to localize, we can go for fluorescent dye. You called the child back and you wanted to test whether it is CSF or not. So you in clinically at home also, can you do some tests? Yes, quickly tell me which tests were there. Yes, sniff test, you can ask the child to sniff back. Okay, which other test? You can ask the child to yes, to bend down like that, and you make him lie down for some time, then make him suddenly sit and bend down. What is that test known as? Reservoir. Also what you can do is, very good, the handkerchief test. You can look for halo sign, and if all this is suggestive, you can collect the CSF, you can send it for biochemical test, and if it is still positive, you can go for then a HRCT, and if still it is there, then we just go for conservative management. So now you saw in the child and you saw that no, whatever is coming out from the nose is not CSF, it is nasal secretions. So you tell the child that yes, you come back after 1 week, and now the child has come after 1 week. What will you do? The child has come after 1 week. Yes, very good. You look for deformity. Deformity not present. Tell me, what will you do? Nothing needs to be done. Okay. If there is deformity, what will you do? Yes, close reduction. Close reduction. If the child has come after 3 weeks, then the management will be open reduction. What is that known as? Rhinoplasty. So this is how you will manage any patient of fracture of the nose, and all of you should know this, because nose is at such a strategic location. To get it injured is very common, and you will see so many people who will ask you that I got injured in the nose and see my X-ray showing fracture. X-ray showing fracture. X-ray has, we never get X-ray done. It is done only for the medical legal purposes. Otherwise, it is not significant whether the X-ray will show fracture or not. That is not going to decide whether we are going to do anything or not. What is going to decide is whether there is deformity or not. If there is deformity, only then we will do something, whether the X-ray shows or does not show any fracture. If there is no deformity, then we are not going to do anything. So that is what we need to know in the fracture of the nose. Now, what is the next most common fracture of the face? Okay, so you start feeling again, what is next most prominent? No, most prominent is okay, nose. Next most prominent, where is it? Where is it? Yes, yes, the cheek. So the next most common fracture is this cheekbone. What is this bone? Which bone is this? Zygomatic bone. So the next most common fracture is the zygomatic bone fracture. Now, as we can see the zygomatic bone here, the zygomatic bone we can see articulates with 3 bones. Anteriorly with the maxillary bone at the zygomatic-maxillary suture, posteriorly with the temporal bone at zygomatic-temporal suture, and superiorly with the frontal bone at zygomatic-frontal suture. If there is fracture at all these 3 suture sites, then this is what is known as tripod fracture. This is known as tripod fracture. So how will you know? You are not able to see the zygomatic bone like this, no? The skull you are seeing. So what will be the presentation of the patient that will tell you that this patient has a zygomatic bone fracture? Patient has come with a history of injury. So on the face, what are the things that you will look for and you will know that this patient has a zygomatic bone fracture? Yes, so all the 3 sutures will lead to different types of problems in the nose, which you can diagnose differently. Now, if there is a fracture at the zygomatic-maxillary suture, if there is a fracture here, what will happen? Fracture, because of fracture here, there will be, this is the intraorbital suture. So what will happen because of the fracture here? Yes, because of this there will be flattening. Normally there is the prominence. So because of this fracture here, there will be flattening of the cheek. Or you can say flattening of the malar eminence or flattening of cheek. And okay, one I have told you. Second, you tell me if there is injury here, what can be injured? Which nerve can be injured? Very good, the intraorbital nerve. So the intraorbital nerve has got injured. How do we know? Intraorbital nerve has got injured. Yes, you will check for anesthesia. In fact, many a times patients, they come following injury and they just say that I'm not able to feel anything here. All this has become just numb. Yes, so what is that indication? Which nerve has got injured? The infraorbital nerve. Infraorbital nerve is a branch of which nerve? Maxillary nerve. Maxillary nerve supplies which part of your face? Yes, is it like this? No, it is like this, ophthalmic maxillary. So this is the intraorbital branch of the maxillary, which is coming out through the intraorbital foramen. Okay, now this also, what you are seeing is that this suture line also forms the margin of the orbit inferiorly. So when there is a fracture of the intraorbital margin, when it is involving the intraorbital margin also, so what will happen is there will be a leak of air around the eye, there will be periorbital emphysema, all this will be swollen, this will be emphysematous, periorbital, there will be periorbital emphysema, and in this fractured line the orbital muscle can get entrapped. How do you know that there is a fracture of the intraorbital rim? Just feel the intraorbital rim. Feel your intraorbital rim right now. Yes, feel. Can you feel it is very smooth? It is very smooth. Now when there will be a fracture, you will find a dip, and then in between the two bones you can feel the two edges and a dip in between. That is what is known as step deformity. So if there is any fracture here, then the muscles of the eye can get entrapped in that fracture, and that will lead to restriction of the ocular movement. There can be diplopia. So that can lead to diplopia. There can be restriction of ocular movement leading to diplopia. And also what will happen whenever there is fracture from here, the orbit, because the muscles get entrapped, that leads to enophthalmos. Whenever there is any mass from behind pushing the orbit from in front, that leads to proptosis. This is enophthalmos. Here there will be enophthalmos. All these features will be present, and because of the fracture of the zygomatico-temporal suture, what will happen? This is zygomatico-temporal suture. This forms the roof of the jaw joint, the temporomandibular joint. This is temporomandibular joint. Yes, so that is just below here is the temporomandibular joint. So now what will happen is this can lead to trismus. What is trismus? Inability to open the mouth. So patient will have all these complaints. So when you look at the patient, you suddenly see that all this is flattened. The eye also is appearing as going inside. Yes, so you can measure the level of both the eyes. You will see it is going out. There is emphysema all around. When you look for the ocular movements, you find that the ocular movements are restricted. And when you feel here, you can feel that there is a step deformity. Also the zygomatico-frontal suture also, if it is gone, then you can also feel a step deformity laterally. So now you confirm that yes, this is a patient of zygomatic bone fracture. Then what you need to do is, when there is a tripod fracture and all these symptoms you are finding, then you need to reduce the fracture. So then you go for reducing the fracture. You reduce by open reduction. Open reduction, you exactly have to see what all is there. So you have to give an incision. There is no way that you can by close, like how in the nose we reduce. That is not possible here. So reduce by open reduction. Now many a times what happens is there is a blow only on the orbit like this. Yes, a severe blow on the orbit, like a hard ball, a cricket ball coming and hitting on the orbit. Yes. So now what happens is that suddenly, because of this increase in pressure, there is a fracture of the floor of the orbit. So the floor of orbit, it forms the roof of the maxillary sinus, yes or no? Yes, so it forms the roof of maxillary sinus. So when the floor of orbit ruptures, all the orbital fat goes into the maxillary sinus, and this on the CT. As you can see here, can you see the floor of the orbit has ruptured? So this on the CT appears like a drop of tear. This is what is known as teardrop sign. So this is seen in fracture of blowout fracture. This is known as blowout fracture of floor of orbit. Blowout fracture itself means it is floor of orbit. It means it is floor of orbit fracture. Okay, now whenever there is a blowout fracture, this what you are seeing is the blowout fracture. Now can you tell me that if there is a severe blow on the orbit, if there is a blowout fracture, it involves mainly the medial wall or the inferior wall? Yes, this was a question 2 years back in your exam. That blowout fracture mainly involves the inferior wall or the medial wall. Yes, I can see that you are answering that medial wall. What is the thinnest wall of the orbit? The thinnest wall, the weakest wall of the orbit, yes, it is the medial wall. But in blowout fracture, the most common site of fracture is the inferior wall. It is the inferior wall of orbit. Why so? Why so? What structures do we have on the medial wall of the orbit? Do we have the ethmoid air cells? Yes or no? Yes, so the ethmoid air cells give a cushioning effect and they distribute the force equally, so that whenever there is a sudden blow, the sudden increase in force is equally distributed on the medial wall because of the presence of ethmoid air cells there. So that is why more commonly fractured is the inferior wall of the orbit. So here also, if there is a blowout fracture, all the features that you will see will be the same, that is because of fracture of this infraorbital margin, that is here. All this, you will see periorbital emphysema, you will see step deformity of infraorbital margin, orbital margin, you will see diplopia, you will see an ophthalmos. So these are the same features in blowout fracture. Now fractures of the maxilla are known as Lee-Ford fracture. So fracture of maxilla are known as Lee-Ford. The Lee-Ford fractures are of three types according to again the severity. Class 1, the class 1 is, as you can see, it is a parallel to the palate fracture. Can you see here? The parallel to palate fracture means what? The whole of the palate, this part, gets separated from the face above. So this is a parallel to palate fracture. This is a parallel to palate fracture, and this is Lee-Ford 1. This is also known as Guerin fracture. Many of the times, patients of falling accidents, this is the fracture that you miss. Why? Because this presents like this. Are you seeing that here in the palate there is ecchymosis? There is bleeding in the palate, and this is the place which you never examine following any fracture of the following any road traffic accident or any injury on the face. So we need to examine this, because if there is the class 1 fracture of the Lee-Ford 1 fracture, that is a Guerin fracture. Later on, if it fuses in a malaligned form, it will lead to dental malocclusion. So it needs to be checked and it needs to be corrected. This is what is known as Guerin sign. So look for a Guerin sign if there is any injury of traffic accident or any injury on the face. The 2 is a pyramidal fracture. As you can see here, the fracture line passes from the floor of the maxillary sinus to the intraorbital margin, and then it goes to meet the other side at the root of the nose. What is this known as? Yes, this is the nasion or the rhinion. I told you nose is first, N, then is rhinology. Yes, so this is nasion. So it meets at the root of the nose. So this is what is known as the pyramidal fracture. Or this is known as Lee-Ford 2. Now in Lee-Ford 1, when you see on the CT or X-ray, it will appear like hanging teeth. When you do the CT, you will see that the whole of the palate has got separated, the upper jaw has got separated from the rest of the face above. This is known as hanging teeth. Whereas Lee-Ford 2, this is known as hanging maxilla. And what is 3? Lee-Ford 3. Lee-Ford 3 is this is the severest form. This is craniofacial disjunction. Just see here, the fracture line is passing from the orbit. It will go from behind, from the base of skull. The complete base of skull separates from the face below. This is craniofacial disjunction. Now if I ask you that which facial fractures will cause intraorbital nerve injury, tell me, intraorbital nerve injury will be caused by which facial fractures? Think and tell me. Okay, will it be by zygomatic bone fracture? Yes. Lee-Ford 2 or 3? Lee-Ford 2, that is the maxillary fracture. The Lee-Ford 3 is craniofacial disjunction. Craniofacial disjunction is what? Craniofacial. Yes, so from here it passes craniofacial, so that does not involve the intraorbital margin. And any fracture of any other fracture you know of which can involve the intraorbital margin? Yes, blowout fracture. So which fractures can lead to intraorbital nerve injury? Intraorbital nerve injury. Yes, it can be a zygomatic fracture, tripod. It can be also a blowout fracture. It can be Lefort. When this question was asked in your exam recently, in the choice Lefort 2 and Lefort 3 both were there. So what will you answer? Yes, Lefort 2. Or Lefort 1 also does it cause? No, Lefort 1 is a parallel to the palate fracture. So can a class 2 nasal fracture also lead to this? Class 2 nasal fracture, what is class 2 nasal fracture? No, whether it is 1, whether it is 2 nasal fractures, all of them 1 and 2 involve only the nasal bone and the septum. It is a class 3 which is severest. It is severest, but still it does not come up till the intraorbital margin. So class 3 fracture, of the nasal bone is what is known as naso-orbito-ethmoid. Naso-orbito-ethmoid fracture. And here there is a severe blow on the nose. And here what happens is the complete ethmoid labyrinth, the ethmoid gets crushed, because of which the upper part of the nose, the ethmoid forms a support to the upper part of the dorsum of the nose. So that gets inside, that gets depressed, because of which the lower part of the nose starts pointing in front. That typically is the nostril of pigs. Yes, that is known as pig nose deformity. Pig nose deformity. Pig nose deformity. That is, the tip starts, the nostrils start facing anteriorly because of the depression there. That is the pig nose deformity. So quickly what you are going to do now is you are going to keep your pens down. Okay, and tell me, how do you manage a Chevalier or a Jargevay fracture? Class 1 or class 2 nasal bone fracture. How do you know it is Chevalier or Jargevay? What is Chevalier? Class 1 or class 2? Chevalier is 1, Jargevay is 2. Okay, if it is a class 2 nasal bone fracture, how will you manage? Or it is a class 1, how do you manage? Yes, you will go for closed reduction. By chance, if by closed reduction the septum is not coming back in place, can you go for a septoplasty at the same time? Yes, you can go for a septoplasty. So for correction of the septum, you can go for septoplasty if closed reduction does not work. If the patient has come after 3 weeks of injury, then what will be the management of class 1 or class 2 nasal bone fracture? Yes, then you will go for rhinoplasty only if the age is more than 17 years. And if it is septum is also deviated, then the rhinoplasty along with septoplasty, that is septorhinoplasty. The same, the septoplasty along with rhinoplasty. How do you, what is the tripod fracture, a fracture of which bone? Tripod fracture is a fracture of, zygomatic bone. Blowout fracture is fracture of what? Blowout fracture is fracture of floor of orbit. Is it floor or medial wall? Yes, it is the floor of orbit. If I ask you, the floor of the orbit will be injured more towards the medial side or the lateral side? Yes, towards medial side. Yes, but most common is floor of orbit, that is blowout fracture. What is the teardrop sign seen in? Teardrop blowout fracture. Gurin sign is seen in Gurin sign. Gurin sign is seen in class, it is Lefort fractured. Which one? Class 1, 2, 3? Yes, that is 1. And a last word we need to know about the facial fractures is that in the mandible, what will be the most common site? Mandible, most common site will be, yes, the subcondylar. That is the weakest. We have seen that picture. We know the picture of the mandible so nicely. So what is the weakest site here? Weakest is just below the condyle, this area, yes. So this is the most common site, subcondylar. Subcondylar fracture is the most common of mandible, fracture of mandible. And mandible, whenever we have to reduce it, we open it and reduce it with the help of titanium plates, as we are seeing here, or with compression plates, so that once we have reduced, immediately the patient is able to speak, eat, the mobility of the mandible does not get hampered. So we do not go for closed reduction, external closed reduction, that used to be done long back. Nowadays what is done to close mandibular floor bone fracture is a very important area for eating, for speaking, and we cannot immobilize it for very long. Otherwise what will happen is tympanomandibular joint arthritis will occur. So we always do open reduction and fixation with the help of compression plates. So management is open reduction. So that is what you need to know in facial fractures. and in CSF rhinorrhea. So quickly open your questions and finish all of them.